we're a colonial inn. Parts of us date all the way back to 1725, and some of the pieces actually do date back quite that far. We kind of existed over the years. We were built in several pieces, and by about 1795, all three pieces of the inn were done. And over the years, it fell out of use as a tavern. So we did a renovation in 1977, from 1977 to 1981, that restored it to what you're seeing here. So where we are right now is the Nicholson Room. And we have a couple of stories in here, all revolving around this clock here. And this clock is from 1740. It is from Boston. It's an original. It is functional, however, we do not wind it. It is far too loud for that. So as I was giving my friend the tour, we opened this and this horrible groaning, whooshing noise came out of it that we can't really explain. It couldn't be depressurizing. There's no solid way to do that. So when I told this story to our head innkeeper of about 36 years, Miss Mary Maisel, she said that old Mr. Havemeyer, Horace Havemeyer, who bought the inn originally, whose son now is our owner, always said that when he died, he would come back and he would haunt this clock. And she claims that the day he died, the clock stopped. So we have a few things attached to this clock, and I didn't know that upon opening it and hearing any funny noises. So I just kind of say hello to Mr. Havemeyer every once in a while, and we haven't heard much else from it since. But we have a lot of activity almost directly above in our Wilmer room as well. I guess if I take you right upstairs to the Wilmer. This is our old 45-star flag that belonged to great Aunt Louisine Havemeyer. She was a suffragette, and she was thrown in jail the year before white women were given the right to vote for burning an effigy of President Woodrow Wilson. So she's our favorite little firecracker.
God bless her.
She was a patron of many artists, Monet, Manet, Degas. She has her own wing at the Met, the Havemeyer wing, that was the remnants of her personal collection. So interestingly enough, both of our stories in this room come from the bathroom, and the fan sounds like this, so I'm just gonna, it grinds horribly. We had a housekeeper, Sybil. She was cleaning the bathroom, ran downstairs to get something, came back up, and the shower was running. Nothing big. And then Heather, who is our head manager here, was cleaning in here as well one day. And when she went to push aside the curtain, she hit something very solid. So she hands off and looked around to make sure there wasn't a towel hanging over the side. And there wasn't. And she did it again and hit something. And then she just walked away. We have a ghost protocol. If anything funny is happening, you can put it down, say, I'm going to come back to this later. And so that's kind of how we deal. So that's really the only thing we've noticed in this room, but they've been really physical touches. Now, we've had reports far in the past of someone seeing a lady standing in this window here in the foyer, but we haven't heard of her in about 5 or 6 years. We haven't gotten any reports. So I'm not sure.
Outside seeing her in the window?
Yeah, people from the street. We close a lot of the blinds when there aren't people in here, but these are always open. Now, our second biggest area of activity is this room right here. So from this door in is the entire Eliason suite, and where the rest of the inn is colonial styled, this is Victorian era. Now, the old building stops right here where these exposed bricks are. And everything that happens from here down.
Okay. That was going to be my next question, actually.
Because the very last room on this particular tour is our Lovegrove room, which has those beams and rafters from 1725. Okay. That is the attic door that leads right over top of the Lovegrove. And in here, we get a variety of things. We hear footsteps coming from here almost every day. That light will not stay on.
Okay.
I can change it 2 or 3 times a day and it will go down. And we hear somebody walking up these steps in particular. And these weren't built until 1977 during the renovation process, which I always thought was kind of fun. So I think somebody's just knocking out this light. And we do have electrical problems throughout the entire downstairs of the old building. All of those little lights like that, we've gone through 8 in the past week and a half.
Now, I'm assuming it's been rewired and all that.
Yes, that's the thing that kind of keeps kicking at our brains, because it is all on the one wiring system that's only about 40 years old, and was done with, like I said, a lot of money behind it, so they really did it right. So what we've had in here as well, people that are sleeping here have reported somebody tugging at their toe, like a little kid playing with tugging at their toe. Child's laughter, we've had people report that they've heard that in this room as well. And like I said, no matter where you are in the inn, you can usually hear footsteps in here. Now, we did have one time, again, Miss Mary Maisel, our 36-year innkeeper, her and a housekeeper in here, she was vacuuming. She turned around, and right about here, she said the cord was floating, just about waist height. And as soon as they both turned and looked at it, Tig went to say something and it dropped. These bricks here and all around the outside are the original bricks. The full inn was completed by 1795. So anything that's original is at least that old, if not a little older. So this would have been done, this would have originally been the back wall to the inn, and that would have been about 1750 or so. So this is our John Lovegrove kitchen room. John Lovegrove was the shoemaker and tanner of Chestertown back in 1725. And this actually used to sit about 20 feet that way where our shed now does. And we actually built the shed to kind of take the shape of what this would have looked like. So these beams and rafters, like I said, from 1725, from when he built. And they actually kicked him out of town because the tanning pit smelled too bad. If I remember correctly, there was something where he had not signed the deed properly. So when he was trying to sell to Mr. Nicholson, they had to go back and get a Wilmer, a different Wilmer, who owned just the plot of land to come sign for it. But the period that we chose for our restoration was 1795. So at that point, it had turned into a summer kitchen. It was still disattached, kept all the fire and the heat away from the main building. So that's where we get our big stove and all from. And this cut in the beam is where we believe his stairs were, because he and his family lived in the attic above. Now, Mr. Lovegrove is one that I have experience with dealing with ghosts in my spaces. So a lot of times when I want to change something in here, I need to very specifically ask him to be okay with that. Specifically, last time was the corn. This is, you can't really see it from this angle. This is hung by a loop of very thick wire on a nail with a very flat head that is tilted upwards. So there's no, it just falls off. But the morning after I put this new corn in, it was laying on the ground. So I picked it up, and I said, Mr. Lovegrove, please, the corn was old, it has been thrown away, can I please put this back up? And I put it back up, and I have not had a single problem with it since. I've actually stayed in this room once, and again, same thing, I said, please don't, just don't. And so, no activity, nothing, we've got an understanding. And the most recent and prevalent things we've got, about 4 or 5 months ago, we had a couple staying in here, and one of the fellows was laying in bed, and he heard a voice right here, and he opened his eyes and there was nothing. And I actually have reached out to him to get more of his story, and unfortunately he hasn't gotten back to me in time. But I'm hoping by October he'll certainly have done that. And then the full apparition, I guess you could say. A woman was sleeping again in that bed, and she opened her eyes, and she saw a man sitting here, and he kind of gave her a very polite nod, and she closed her eyes and waited a few minutes to make sure she wasn't seeing things. And she opened them back up, and he was still here. So she straightened up, and she just walked into the bathroom, and when she came back out, he was gone. So we were actually looking at this chair later, and we noticed that if you lift this cushion here, and it's a potty chair. So I believe that we called a ghost at a most inappropriate time, causing much embarrassment for everyone, I'm sure.
Okay. Just a gentleman sitting in the chair, but she didn't tell me what he was dressed like.
Okay.
I was impressed that she walked past
Did she
him.
say that? Yeah. Did she say that he acknowledged her at all?
No, he was just sitting there.
He was just sitting there.
But he was facing
Her.
where she was sitting up in bed.
But he didn't
He
acknowledge
didn't
her. in
say
any way.
anything. He didn't know. Just sitting there, and she said she closed her eyes and waited for him to leave, and then opened them back up, and he was still there, and she still needed to be. So she walked past him, but when she came back, he was not there.
But that's kind of the showpiece ghost story that we use for tours and whatnot. Because, who's heard of a ghost on the potty? So.
That probably is the first one I've heard of,
yeah. And then, just the usual, like I said, we have light bulbs that just go out at such a rate. And they are all very specifically this little shape.
The ones that look like actual,
right.
ones that look like fire.
But not in this
Candle
room.
lit.
Right. This room doesn't have that sort of problem to it at all. And then, like I said, the entire new half of the building, we get no activity, period. We can hear the footsteps from the Elysian because of how we're positioned. But there's nothing really happening in the kitchen or anything like that.
I'll have to remember all these little steps so I don't trip over them on that.
So this is our museum case. Like I said, we did our renovation in 1977. And during that process, we did an archaeological dig. And we recovered over 70,000 pieces. It is one of the biggest digs that has been done in this area, period.
Look at that, you found a stirrup. Oh my God.
And it's recently come to light that what they did with those is they heated them to the temperature of melted beeswax, dipped them in, and put them right in the case to keep them from rusting any farther.